In just about 30 minutes or so at the bottom of the hour, but stay with us because the O'Reilly Factor starts right now.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thank you for watching us tonight. Slanting the war coverage. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Most military experts are saying the campaign in Iraq is an unprecedented success. The war is now 6 days old. The USA has losses of 20 dead and 14 captured or missing, according to the Associated Press. The Allies control most of the country and are knocking on the door of Saddam's bunker. But if you read the New York Times today, you might think Iraq was winning. The front page of the Times was full of ominous headlines. Iraqis repel copters, one goes down. GIs regroup after setback, 2 prisoners on Iraqi TV. Hussein rallies Iraqi defenders. The goal is Baghdad, but at what cost? All of these headlines were on just one page. Unbelievable. Contrast that to page 1 of the Boston Globe, also a very liberal newspaper. Coalition nearing Baghdad. War plan on course. Hunt for banned weapons. Strategy aims at heart of Hussein's rule. Quite a difference. The Globe giving straight and honest war coverage. So why is the New York Times spinning its coverage to the negative side? Well, there's a big reason. Everybody knows the USA will win the war, but if the victory is too overwhelming, the Bush administration wins big too. The Times definitely does not want that to happen. So its editorial position is shading its news coverage, and that's flat out wrong. The Times wants a Pyrrhic victory, that is, a win with consequences, so we can say that more diplomacy should have been tried. This kind of game, playing with vital information, makes me extremely angry. There's no question that today's front page of the nation's most powerful newspaper does not reflect the truth of the battlefield. Here's how absurd the whole thing is. 20 Americans are dead. 9 of them were killed by cowardly Iraqis who faked a surrender. And the majority of those captured made a wrong turn, driving right into the Iraqi forces. There have been few major engagements between Iraqi units and American combat troops. The Iraqis are killing coalition soldiers by dressing up in civilian clothes, shooting from mosques and child care centers, and generally violating every rule of warfare in the book. Yet the Times calls the resistance fierce. Well, I call that kind of coverage farce, and I can back up my description with the facts, not misleading headlines. There may indeed be vicious fighting before this war is over, but right now American troops have done incredibly well, fighting against cowardly thugs and not using much of its arsenal in order to protect Iraqi civilians. So now you know the truth from the battlefield. Somebody call the New York Times and tell them. That's a memo. Now for the top story tonight. The latest war information for you. Joining us are Peter Brooks, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under Donald Rumsfeld. He's in Washington. Also in D.C., Fox News military analyst and retired Navy Captain Chuck Nash, and Fox News military analyst, retired Army Captain David Christian here in the studio. What's the most important thing that happened today, Captain?
Well, shocking thing for U.S. troops, I think, is the weather. The weather did what the Iraqi army couldn't do. It stopped us in our tracks. So we are regrouping while the sandstorms could blow through here. Hopefully,
yeah, but that may be good. Gives everybody a breather, you know?
Gives us a break, gives the whole army a break, and I think they need a break. We've moved faster and fiercer, if you want to use the word fierce, but we moved faster, historically speaking, than in modern military history under Colonel Parker. He's really moved an army here.
All right.
And in the wake, we've left...
Yeah, I mean, the sandstorm is a sandstorm, and you got to expect that kind of thing. Captain Nash, what's the most important thing that happened today?
I think all the evidence started clicking in that what the United States has been saying about Iraq is pretty much right on target. I mean, they got people dressed in U.S. uniforms shooting their own troops. They're hiding tanks in hospitals. And when given the opportunity, the town of Basra revolts against the Saddam Hussein regime.
Now, we're going to have a report on that from Amman. We got our people on it right now. So you believe that report's true from Basra?
Sounds like it is true.
Okay, because it's hard to get, you know, we don't have anybody in there. Got a couple of Sky TV reporters from Britain, but they're out with the British troops. They're not in the middle of it. But if true, I mean, this is a turning point. Mr. Brooks, what was the most important thing for you that happened today?
Without a doubt, I think it was Basra. This is another fissure in the crack of the regime, and we are hoping for this sort of uprising. We can have something in the south. If we move quickly and cautiously, we may be able to sustain this, and we may see the same thing in the north with the Kurds.
All right, now, when you say that it's the most important thing that you've seen, if it's just an uprising against, you know, SS troops, which is primarily what these guerrillas, whatever you want to call them, Saddam's buddies, the paramilitaries are, why would you expect that to happen in any territory not conquered by the U.S.? That's the problem, that they're still fearful, right?
Well, of course they're concerned, but this is a, remember, Saddam Hussein has had to keep these people subjugated for some time, and now we had run around Basra, and now we're getting their support in fighting Saddam Hussein, and he is having to use elements of his armed forces or paramilitary to keep the Iraqi people under control.
Yeah, he can't do both. I mean, obviously,
right.
This would be a great thing. I'm not sure to what extent it is. All right, now, Captain Christian, we are hearing all about the no combat zones. You know, and it's very frustrating. I'm getting emails from the guys in the field saying, hey, you know, this is really hurting us. I mean, we can't go here, we can't attack there. As we pointed out, they're shooting from mosques, they're shooting from, I don't know, is this going to stop or what?
Well, yeah, we have to have the military commanders take over. We can't have the, you know, free kill zones or free fire zones, no combat zones.
But you got them.
We have them, but we're going to have to make a decision there. And I think that we're going to have to, as we go into Basra, for example, they can rebuild a mosque. You can't put a person's life back on the streets there. If someone is shooting from a mosque, we're going to have to be, militarily speaking, responsible and react to that shooting from the mosque.
All right, now I got to go. I'm going to go right to Mr. Brooks. Mr. Brooks, look, we just did a report on Shepard Smith that said, look, the Arab world, most of the Arab countries are, you know, just propagandizing this thing like crazy. So why do we bother having no combat zones? If we're trying to be humane and it's not going to work no matter what we do, why are we putting our own soldiers in danger? Because this is coming out from the, you know, the Defense Department. It's coming out from Donald Rumsfeld. He doesn't want, you know, to give the propaganda upper hand, but they're going to make it up anyway.
Well, that's true, but you know, we are a country based on values and honesty and truth, Bill, as you just pointed out about the New York Times. And we have certain values here, and civilian lives are valuable, and we have to try to walk that thin line with achieving our military objectives while minimizing civilian casualties. Remember, Bill, once again, this is not a war on the Iraqi people. This is a war on Saddam Hussein.
I know all that, but
regime.
as Captain Christian pointed out, once you go into an inner city like Basra or Baghdad, they're going to do the same stuff. They're going to be hiding behind children. They're going to be shooting at our guys from all kinds of places and daycare centers and everything else.
Well, we have to be concerned about urban warfare, Bill, but there's other ways to skin a cat than running into the cities. We can lay siege to them. We can cut off their logistics. There's all sorts of ways. So, and that's how we're moving in a very incremental and a measured pace. So I wouldn't worry about that. We haven't gotten to that point right as yet, and we've been very significantly successful in prosecuting this war so far.
Oh, that's true. I mean, but the big battle is to come.
Those are tactics. Those are not strategic issues. And it's a very fine line, and we still have to keep the support of the international community and what we're doing.
What support of the international community?
Well,
there is no support of the international community.
Well, I don't agree with that, but I mean, there is support. There's support of the international community and the American people, which is the most important.
All right, the American people, yes. We don't have any support in the international community. Only the 50 countries that signed on. The others are just going to kill us with propaganda no matter what we do. Now, Captain Nash, you get a situation now where you have frustration among the soldiers. They see their own executed. We know that the Iraqis have executed some prisoners of war, American prisoners of war. They can't fire into certain areas. They got people dressed up in all kinds of different uniforms, as we pointed out. I mean, that takes a toll psychologically on the military, doesn't it?
Well, it does, except that, number one, I've heard that we've had some people executed. I don't know that we have. They could have received those injuries in the ambush.
I don't know. It's hard to get a bullet between the eyes, you know?
Well, you know, all I'm saying is I don't know that I don't know that that's true. I know those folks are dead, but I don't know how they got that way other than they wound up in an ambush. But as far as this business about shooting at mosques or shooting from mosques, the fact of the matter is, under the rules of warfare, and there are such things, there are protected targets. Religious symbols and religious buildings are protected targets.
All right, but if we're obeying the rules, Captain, and the Iraqis are not obeying them, which is quite obvious,
then the status changes. If you violate one of those targets and you man that and you use it as a military structure, it loses its protective status.
Okay, what about a child care center? They're doing that. They're hiding behind the children and the women.
They had a tank in a hospital, and they had a bunch of chem bio suits down there too. We know what they're up to.
Yeah,
we know what they're doing.
We all know. We got some information after last night's broadcast that I haven't been able to confirm, but it's good information. I believe it's true. The CIA estimates that 25,000 Iraqi military have died so far. Does that surprise you, Captain?
No, I expected actually more than 25,000.
Yeah, that's a conservative estimate. The 25,000 Iraqi military are dead.
With the
20
bombings.
Americans.
Humanity, as we're going at this, humanity and war don't seem to go together, Bill. I mean,
yeah, but politics and war don't go together either, do they?
That's politics. When we go to war, it means politics is no longer existing.
But it is.
It is.
You're not living in the land of Oz, are you, Captain?
They're encroaching on us.
I mean, Mr. Brooks can explain to you how political this war is, can't you, Mr. Brooks?
Well, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that the others with us tonight probably know is that war is an extension of politics.
That's
I mean,
right.
Clausewitz said that, and it certainly has a political element, whether you're talking about domestic politics or not, but war is an extension of politics.
You see, the problem here is that we don't want another Vietnam situation where you get the poor guys over there and they're not allowed to fight and they can't go into the Ho Chi Minh Trail and they can't go chasing them into Cambodia and they can't use the bombs strategically to knock out the supply routes of the North Vietnamese. Now, look, you're right. It's all under control now. All right? Our casualties have been minimal. Their casualties have not. But they don't care. And for every one American that dies, you know, the rest of the country is, oh, like this, like the New York Times, I pointed out. Do any of you three disagree with me that the New York Times reported this war in a negative way? Do any of you three disagree with that?
No, I agree with you. And Bill, they started doing that. It was almost as if they were batting the pigeon back over the net, back and forth between the editorial page and the front page.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's a disgrace. And, you know, most of the people fear the Times because they'll come after me and they'll say something nasty. I don't care. I want the American people to know. But I just pointing this out to see how deeply this is ingrained, that whatever we do, no matter how good we are or how many no-combat zones there are, that people like the New York Times, Al Jazeera, now I'm putting the Times in Al Jazeera's category, but you're not going to get the accurate picture. It's always going to be negative toward us. And I'm wondering whether we should reassess this, Mr. Brooks, that maybe we should reassess this a little bit.
What, the war progress, Bill?
Yeah, the way we're fighting it.
No, I don't think so at all. Look, we have made significant progress on the road to disarming Saddam Hussein and ending his brutal dictatorship over the Iraqi people. I mean, we've injured him. We're 50 miles from Baghdad. We've covered 200 miles in 5 days. We haven't seen anything like this since World War II. We've had minimal U.S. and civilian casualties. We have a port. We're going to be bringing humanitarian aid. We are on track. This is not a parlor game. This is a war bill.
I got it. Now, I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Brooks, and I'm going to ask, I want all three of you to answer this question. There is a school of thought that says we should have given the citizens of Baghdad 48 hours to get out of Dodge, you know, by dropping leaflets and going with the AM radios and all of that. To get 48 hours, you got to get out of it and flatten the place. Then the war would be already over, and we could have done that in 2 days. Saddam Hussein, we'd be picking up his pieces right now. Is there any validity to that, Mr. Brooks? We'll begin with you.
No, I don't believe so. I think that, you know, Saddam Hussein could be outside of Baghdad. We don't know where he is.
Yeah, but he's done that. You flatten Baghdad, you flatten all the troops. We know where they go. There's nowhere to hide in the desert. We know where everybody's moving. And you know as well as I do, this war could have been over in 2 days. I
don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I think that there's other ways they could have sustained this. It would be great if it was, Bill, but I don't think that's the case. Unfortunately, we can't examine the hypothetical counterfactual here, but I don't think that's
the way we should have gone. No, but it still can be done. Captain Nash, what do you say?
No, you don't flatten Baghdad, Bill, and we've already been dropping leaflets. The press reports coming out of Baghdad 2 weeks ago called it a, quote, a ghost town. So the people that can get out have already beat feet. There are still people there, but the Republican Guards are on the outskirts. The population, a lot of folks are still going to work and everything, but a lot of people have left. So the final warning could still be given. There's still more play in this end game.
Yeah, sure.
And then we have to rebuild Baghdad.
It's just frustrating for everybody to know that we have been fighting this war with one hand behind our back. Isn't that true, Captain?
You know, I fought Vietnam with one hand. I mean, as you indicated, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, if we went into Cambodia, we had to get out on our own. We could not have someone come in to get us to extract us. We had to carry our wounded on our backs.
But this is ridiculous.
And it's absurd when the politics in the halls of Congress, or it happens to be from the White House or anywhere, says these are the rules of land warfare, and the enemy's not going to adhere to them. And I have to agree with Chuck. Once the enemy violates those rules, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about once the enemy starts firing from a hospital and starts killing a member of your squad, we should return fire. We should call in some steel. Give me a wall of steel. I'd get on that radio right away and I'd say, look, I want a wall of steel to level it.
The tragedy is that they're hiding behind women and children, and I couldn't call that in.
I think the majority of the women and children have left.
Not in Basra and places like that.
Basra, the people in Basra are Shiite, for the most part, they're Shiites. And they also...
But the Fedayeen are hiding behind them. That's what even the British soldiers are saying.
Correct.
That.
After Desert Storm, they went in an uprising, and they thought we were going to come in to help them.
Yeah, but look,
and
the Fedayeen are SS. You know what they are. They're
just like the SS,
yeah,
absolutely.
They are SS. They come in, they behead people, they do everything. People are petrified
and
of
they
them.
cut the water off.
They cut their own water off, sure.
And that's why
but you know what Al Jazeera says? We cut it off. You know, this is what's driving me crazy, you guys, because we're not going to win. We're not going to win the popular opinion war overseas. And I'm saying to myself, maybe we need a reassessment of how aggressively we wage this war, because in the end, they're going to hate us anyway.
Bill, in the end, when we win this thing and the truth comes out about what was really going on, we are still going to hold the high ground.
All right, maybe morally we will,
Bill.
but the truth is never going to come out to the people of Pakistan or Indonesia or Egypt. They will never hear the truth under any circumstances, Captain.
Yeah, but Bill, we got to look at ourselves in the mirror in the morning as well.
What was that, sir?
We have to look at ourselves in the mirror in the morning as well.
Sure. I understand.
Well, we're looking at ourselves in the morning, but Abu Dhabi television, Al Jazeera, they have to look at themselves in the morning, and I don't think they're looking at themselves. As we send home body bags, we have to start reassessing from a military standpoint, from the ground commander. When we're starting to take casualties, as we go into Basra, it's going to be the British going in there, and these people are not fighting with the rules of land warfare. We have to reevaluate, and we have to send up to our commanders. There's a situation here where a mosque is giving us such intense conflict that we have to
You know what really
respond.
angered me, and this is the final question for you guys, and I'm going to whip it around. You can all three. What really angered me about the New York Times today, and you hit it right on the head, Captain Nash, when you said that their editorial page bleeds over and they're trying to push their agenda or their prediction of what would happen during the war. But they're trying to make these Iraqi Fedadeens and all these people to be heroes, these Iraqi troops to be, and they're cowards, they're thugs. I mean, they're not fighting. If they were fighting, there'd be a fight in the desert. They would have fought in the Kuwait border to keep us from coming in there. They're hiding behind children, and you don't see that in the French. We're going to go to Paris in a few minutes. You don't see that in the French press, in the Arab press, and even in the newspaper of record in the United States of America. You don't see it. You see fierce resistance. Doesn't it drive you guys nuts?
20 dead is not fierce resistance. I mean, we've taken 20 casualties. That's not fierce resistance when we've moved the 3rd Marines. We've taken Basra.
300,000 people.
You know, 300,000 people are moving around the country there. And the majority is, as you indicate, many of those that took a wrong turn, friendly fire.
Right.
So that's fierce resistance. That could have happened in the streets of New York.
Captain Nash, what do you say?
What I say is a conversation I had with Lieutenant General Tom McInerney last night. He pointed out that the distance that we have moved our troops is the equivalent distance of Normandy to Belgium. We've lost how many?
20 right now. Probably more when they shoot out for the mosque next. Gentlemen, thanks very much. Very interesting conversation. Next on the rundown, Gray Palkot on the uprising by Iraqis against Saddam in Basra. We'll get the latest on that. And then some American media outlets are slanting the coverage, as we told you. Also, France will take it to Paris as the factor continues.
Powerful primetime lineup on cable news, period.
The personal story segment tonight, as we told you at the top of the broadcast, the front page of the New York Times today would give the perception that the war was going against the USA. My thesis is that the Times is shading its coverage to bolster its editorial point of view. The war was ill-advised and President Bush was unprepared. To be fair, I don't get to see all the media coverage, but ideologues on both the left and the right are complaining loudly. Joining us now from Washington is Dr. Robert Lichter, the conservative from the Center for Media and Public Affairs, and the author of the book, The Nightly News Nightmare. Here in the studio, Steve Rendell from The Liberal, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. All right, Steve, we'll begin with you. What's your beef?
Well, you didn't tell me any ideologues were going to be here tonight. But anyway, your slam on the Times. Look, the Times isn't fair and balanced. The Times has been downplaying the anti-war movement. They recently relegated a very large demonstration this past Sunday to page B11. What the Times is the Times is an establishment newspaper. They try to bolster the establishment. The fact that the Times is now reporting some negative stories about the war effort has to do with the Times shadowing the Bush administration, which has been trying to lower expectations.
Oh, I agree with you. I mean, they want to hurt the Bush administration. It's not a war thing, it's a political thing.
No, but they're doing this allied with the Bush administration. They're trying to lower expectations. After all, listen, while this war was being sold,
in the land of Oz, there's no linkage between the Times and the Bush administration.
While this war was being sold, Ken Edelman said it was going to be a cakewalk. He's from the Defense Policy Board. Wolfowitz, Pearl, Bush, everybody downplayed how tough this war was going to be. You told your audience, you made a bet with one of your guests, you bet an expensive dinner that the war would be over in a week. Another time you said it would be over in a few hours. Your earlier guest, Peter Brooks, said on CNN last week that it would be over in 2 weeks. There has been a lot of cakewalk talk.
All right.
And the
now,
Times
the reason
foreshadowing...
is, none of us are oracles, but the reason is that we're fighting a political war, as we pointed out. That we have 20 dead. It's by all military accounts, even you would have to admit that this war has gone very smoothly for the Allies. 20 dead.
Well, I'm not a military analyst. I'm a media critic.
It's obviously not. Because if you think the war isn't going well, then you're in the land of Oz.
The war is not the cakewalk that it was sold to us as.
That's 20 dead after 5 days.
So you're sticking with the cakewalk, Bill. You're sticking with the cakewalk scenario.
What I'm saying to you is this: that this war could be over if they wanted it to be, but they're fighting it on a level of politics first, military second. All right, let's go to Dr. Lickery. What's your beef, Doctor?
Well, I'll be glad to talk not as a conservative, but as a social scientist who is studying this and has studied war coverage and anti-war coverage. I actually agree, I think, with Steve that early on the media were surprised by the anti-war movement and its strength. It's kind of like Woody Allen's saying 80% of life is just showing up. Well, 80% of making news is showing up, getting organized.
All right, but when you say strength, I got to have it. Look, 70% of Americans favor the action, all right? And yes, there have been some San Francisco and New York and Chicago, there have been some big turnouts on the anti-war movement. But it's an ideological movement. Everybody understands that. Even the people who organize say it's ideological. So I wasn't surprised by that. You were?
No, I think that the anti-war movement has been getting enough of a voice lately.
Everybody saw it.
Not initially, but lately. And indeed, Steve is not representative of everybody on the left. The director of the Institute for Policy Studies, the premier progressive think tank, today came out with a statement that he is impressed that his organization's views are much better represented than they were during the Gulf War. And NPR's ombudsman just criticized National Public Radio for putting on too many anti-war voices. So there's a lot of media
NPR put on too many anti-war voices?
Excuse me, I think I hear earth calling here. I just published a study of 4 networks: ABC World News Tonight, CBS Evening News, NBC Nightly, and the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer. I looked at 2 weeks of every source, on-camera source, who talked in an Iraq story. There were 3 out of 393 sources who spoke about Iraq who were anti-war voices. At any given time, polls have shown that 20 to 25% of Americans are against this war under any circumstances.
All right, 20 to 25, that's not much.
Bill, what I'm saying to you is the 70% that support this war now support the cakewalk war that they were sold in the weeks leading up.
But Steve, look, the casualties are infinitesimal. All right,
it's 6 days old, and it has already met.
And the Allies control 3/4 of the country after 6 days.
Bill, control means you administer the country. They're worried about rearguard actions.
Right, look, I'm going to leave the military to the military experts. You guys are the media experts. Now, Doctor, I did a look at day 1 of the network news coverage, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and I saw that of all 3, the most conservative was CBS, Dan Rather. He played it straighter when you want to just the facts. ABC and NBC both devoted 5 minutes, Steve, 5 minutes out of 22 to the anti-war movement on the first day of the war. Doctor, does that surprise you?
No, I think you have to look at the breadth of the coverage over time rather than just one day.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But, I will say, I'm not sure Steve has completely represented his study. He said only 3% anti-war. The overall finding of his study, as it's up on their website, is that 1 out of 6 sources were critical or skeptical toward the war. Problem is, he therefore says, okay, that means only 1 out of 6 is skeptical, but he doesn't tell you that a lot of the others might be neutral. You get the impression that 5 out of 6 are supportive.
No, I didn't say that.
With all due
Actually,
respect, I don't care about your study.
Thank you for the plug, Bill.
They want to see your study, then go to your website. I don't care about that, Doctor. Right? Dueling
Fair.org.
Don't bother me. I want to know your impressions thus far. Do you believe, Doctor, that there is a difference in the network coverage, a tone? Look, everybody knows the Fox News Channel wants America to win. All right? We're upfront about that. We want the American to win. But I don't know if the others reflect that tone.
My impression is if there's a spectrum of the way the war is presented, ranging from, say, the patriotic spectrum, the notion that journalists should be for our troops, to the independent or objective spectrum saying we should take a bird's eye view and not look at it from America's point of view, I'd say that Fox is on the patriotic end. ABC, I think, is the farthest over on the other end.
So they'd be the most skeptical, ABC?
Yeah, I would say that.
What do you think that's accurate?
Well, we found a few more skeptics on the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer, but still less than 1% across the board on these 4 networks. The problem is, we wish that Fox News would come out of the closet on its conservatism, along with its coming out of the closet on it being hawkish.
You know, I know what you wish, but
well,
we're going to report the truth.
We're seeing Fox News reports that are eating up government propaganda. For instance, the chemical weapons factory that was supposedly taken over by the U.S. military last week. That story the Pentagon is backing off of. You had reporters here on Fox stating as fact that Scuds had been used. The Pentagon has backed way away from that story.
Well, let me stop you here.
These are
Wait,
this
let
is
me
a kind of
stop you
bias.
here.
This is the bias.
CBS News reported both of those stories.
And they reported them as coming from the Pentagon. Fox reported them as fact. They did not attribute.
Well, I don't know about that, but every news organization reported the story. In the fog of war, as Peter Jennings, I think, said, things get reported that sometimes aren't true.
Well, I would say
look,
they all should have backed off it. They all should have backed off it more. We haven't seen many corrections.
Why do you care?
Why do I care?
Yeah, what do you care whether there's a munitions plant that doesn't have it?
That false information.
False information. Do you want it not to be there?
False information? Yes, I want false information not to be there.
No,
Bill.
do you want the munitions not to be in the plant? Yes,
Bill,
you do.
I want the facts to be out.
You do.
I want the facts to be out.
No, you're rooting against
Bill.
this.
You guys reported.
You just saw that, ladies and
I'm rooting
gentlemen.
against the Fox News Channel?
No, you're rooting against the country in this war, I believe.
Bill,
I believe you want the Bush administration
for good, tough journalism.
You're rooting for the Bush administration to go down
You're not going to bait me with that.
All
But
right.
I'm glad you're out of the closet with the hawkish.
We just saw your face in that question. I think that spoke volumes. Gentlemen,
I didn't know what you were
very
asking.
Much. Yeah. Let's take you to Paris now, where Steve Rendell would feel very comfortable. French media is also shading its coverage of the Iraq situation to favor France's point of view. Joining us from Paris is Time Magazine bureau chief James Graff. All right, so tomorrow, when you wake up, you expect to see what in Le Monde and all those newspapers, Mr. Graff?
Well, Le Monde won't come out till tomorrow afternoon, but what's in the papers today is clearly what we've been hearing from your last guest.
Turf builder with halts. The best defense against crabgrass.
Time now for the most ridiculous item of the day. Actor Tim Robbins, who's living with actress Susan Sarandon, is angry at the Washington Post. Seems gossip writer Lloyd Grove talked to Miss Sarandon's mother, who's a conservative. Lenora Tomlin apparently told Mr. Grove that her daughter is kind of misguided, in her opinion. Anyway, according to Grove, Robbins confronted him at an Oscar party in Hollywood and threatened to do him some harm. Wow. Which might be ridiculous, but I can't say I wouldn't have done the same thing if somebody bothered my mother. So I kind of sympathize with Robbins. Finally tonight, the mail. It is pouring in from around the world. Damian Sanders, London, England. Bill, I listened to you say that Turkey hurt the USA and that you believe they will get what's coming to them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this democracy in action? Elected officials voted against a proposal to allow the U.S. military to transit through. Well, that is correct, Mr. Sanders, but in a democracy, every vote has consequences. We loan Turkey an amazing amount of money. We don't have to do that. And if the Turks will not help America and Britain in a time of need, why should we? That's democracy, too. Jeannie Matthews, Lakeland, Florida. O'Reilly, who do you think you are? You are no more independent than my dog. I agree with Michael Moore and the rest of Hollywood. We are trading blood for oil. Hey, Miss Matthews, I hear Mr. Moore may be looking for a date. Give him a call. I hope your dog becomes an independent. It's a good place. Shelley Beaver, Seattle. Hey, Mr. O, calm down, get a grip, and admit it. The factor is not a no-spin zone. That would be bearing false witness if I admitted that, Shelley. Gil Williams, USS Emory, as a member of the Navy deployed on a forward ship. I'm appalled. The American news media's portrayal of how our captured troops are being treated. Only Al Jazeera and the BBC are telling it like it is. Well, Al Jazeera is a propaganda outlet, Mr. Williams. The BBC is anti-war. Fox News will tell you the truth. But we might not broadcast brutal images if they serve no purpose. Kylie Michelle, Sydney, Australia. I would like to remind the anti-war protesters that the coalition forces are the good guys. Josh Keeter, St. Louis. Mr. O, I found Michael Moore's comments to be tasteless, but it is people like him that help keep our government in check. Tim Zoba, Houston. Bill, thanks for calling Moore's comments exactly what they were. Disgusting. For whom does he think he is speaking? Lynn Snyder, Livonia, Michigan. As a fellow Michigan resident, I can say you would be hard-pressed to find anyone around here who supports Moore. Janice Milo, Sugar Land, Texas. Bill A. also felt Moore's comments were embarrassing, but to state that he despises his country is over the top. Mark Taylor, Texas. Regarding Michael Moore winning an Oscar, I didn't even know Jackass was nominated. Good mud. And Michael Kwiatkowski, Cleveland, Ohio. Moore is just a left-leaning version of you. Bill, please take that as a compliment. Michael, let me break this to you gently. Mr. Moore and I have nothing in common. Nothing. How about that website? www.foxnews.com/O'Reilly. Last night for my column on Walter Cronkite, if you go into our website, you can click on over to BillO'Reilly.com, and there's the Cronkite column. I think you'll like it. Also, please email us with pithy comments from anywhere in the world. We'd like to read your mail from around the world. I'd like to get that perspective. O'Reilly@FoxNews.com, O'Reilly@FoxNews.com. Thanks for everybody who has written in. We get thousands of letters, and we read them, so it helps us out. That is it for us today. As always, we thank you for watching The Factor. Please remember the Radio Factor every day on Westwood One. Hannity and Combs is next. Bill Bennett. I'm Bill O'Reilly. We do hope to see you again next time. And remember, the spin stops right here.
Welcome to Hannity and Combs. I'm Alan Combs. Let's